Hi everyone, I hope you are all doing well. I wanted to do this case as my coverage of Christina Gallagher was so popular with the people that agreed with my depiction, and of course those that didn't. It was amusing to read your negative comments and lovely to read the positive ones. It lets me know logic still exists. So I went searching to see if there were any other cult-like groups in Ireland, and I was surprised at how many there were. Some cult leaders are smarter than the average bear or more conniving. They like to run their business under the radar where hopefully they can get vulnerable people to hand over their time, money and even their lives, to sacrifice their families and even their freedom, all in the name of salvation, living a purer life and following the true Messiah. The man I'm going to speak about today was not as obvious as some. He was before his time really, and he would fit right in and still does. Today we have a degree of New Age religion. We take supplements, we do yoga, we explore spirituality, our inner self and so on. I don't see anything wrong with this. I think each to their own, and if it helps you to bring you peace, health and wellness, I'm all for it. But there are always the few that see it as an opportunity to take advantage, so they end up controlling every aspect of your life and bleed you dry, of all your money and possessions and even your soul. One such person is the man I'm going to talk about today, Tony Quinn. Tony Quinn is a man that has many fingers and many pies, from being a bodybuilder to a yogi instructor, life coach to a hypnotist, pyramid schemes, entrepreneur and even being involved in the oil business in Belize. Any information that I relay here either comes from Tony himself or people that have investigated him and his shady dealings, and not so shady dealings, as some aspects of his life are legitimate and legal and still doing well today. For example, his supplement business. Tony was born on the 7th of February 1946 on the South Quays in Dublin, and later he and his parents moved to Arbor Hill. He left school early, as many did back then, and got a job as a salesman for HB Ice Cream. At 17 he became an apprentice butcher in Philsborough and then a bouncer at Club Go Go on Dame Street in Dublin. Tony himself said that his dad Paddy was a well-known liked guy in the area, and his mother was a mother who dedicated her life to raising him in a way that turned him into the man he is today. He also claimed that a priest had prophesied his birth a year before he was born. Tony got into weight training as a young boy, claiming that his mother tied concrete blocks to sweeping brushes, and it was his mother who sourced nutritional food and extra nutrients to help build his body. His mother also had to sign for him at the local library, so he could get his hands on yoga books at 10 years of age. To be honest, this sounds a little far-fetched. 1950s Ireland was a time far from yoga. The only bending you'd be doing back then would be to get a scalp across the arse for being bold. Tony was a great salesman. His strive for success was fueled by being able to one day provide for his mother and father. He loved learning, and once he had conquered the body, it was time to conquer the mind. In 1989, at the age of 46, he began studying hypnotherapy, psychotherapy, neuro-linguistic programming and behaviour modelling. Of course, this wasn't enough for him. He also claimed he was a doctor of clinical hypnotherapy, approved by the Californian State of Education. The list of degrees went on and on. He claimed he won 12 bodybuilding titles, and he was behind bringing yoga to Ireland in 1971. He had moved to the US to study, and it was here that he would earn many of his degrees. It was also here he came across yoga and brought it to Ireland. So I think his telling of his childhood, going to the library and reading up about yoga may have been a tall tale. Once he conquered the mind, he started to put his knowledge into practice. In 1994, Dr. Quinn, as he now called himself, assisted 4 patients that were to undergo major surgical operations, using the power of the mind to control pain. From this, he claimed he earned a Master's of Science degree in the hypnotherapy, psychotherapy and the neuro-linguistic programming, as I mentioned already. Dr. Quinn received a lot of media attention from this, and he would appear on RTE's Late Late Show and showcase his power on a lady in the audience.
Going down now, we're coming down now, and now we're going down to that floor, and everything really begins to fade out, and you're very safe and secure. We're so happy, and that means that nothing in the future is going to bother you in any way whatsoever. So So how do you feel after all that? It's only a few minutes later.
Absolutely wonderful. I can't help feeling wonderful.
After his appearance on The Late Late Show, Steve Collins, WBO middleweight champion boxer, contacted Tony to help him with his training. He had a fight coming up against Chris Eubank. They began a strict training regime for mind and body, which involved only a few hours of physical training per week. At the weigh-in, Collins told journalists and Eubank, of course, that he had been hypnotised, that he couldn't be hurt and he wouldn't bleed in the ring. It's not a gamble, but an investment, he said. It was put down to being a ruse, but it worried Eubank and fooled plenty more like him. Eubank saw Quinn as some kind of witch doctor and didn't want to fight Collins. But the fight did go ahead in Mill Street in Cork, and Steve Collins would win this fight in March 1995, making it the first fight Eubank ever lost in his professional career up to that time, and losing his WBO super middleweight title to Collins. They would go on to fight again in September of that same year, and again Collins won for the second time in Páirc Uí Chaoimh in Cork. Collins would go on to fire Tony after 3 fights, telling Sky Sports, "We fooled the world." Stating in his autobiography, he said, "We fooled him." After his first fight with hypnotherapist Tony Quinn as advisor, Collins later said of Tony that he was someone who helped him on his way, but he was inferior when compared to other hypnotists. As a result of Collins' success, Tony founded the EDUCO system, which is categorised by the Cult Education Institute as a human potential group and therapy counselling group. This would become a small empire of supplement kiosks, gyms and self-improvement courses that he sold to his followers, first setting up at his homes in Malahide and Howth and eventually going worldwide in places like Belize, the Bahamas, India, America and South Africa. The EDUCO gym program involved a ketogenic diet, his own dietary supplements and a time machine exercise device, whatever that is when it's at home. Celebrity clients included singer Robbie Williams, soprano Cara O'Sullivan and golfer Darren Clarke. In 2000 he got involved in a new adventure in oil in Belize. Some of his devoted followers from there struck oil and they put it down to Tony and his mind coaching being the catalyst in them finding oil. It was even written and spoken about in the manifestation book The Secret, where Rhonda Byrne, the author, writing about Tony and his abilities to infiltrate the mind and teach people to manifest their desires into reality. So why is Tony Quinn and his followers now compared to such a cult like NXIVM? This is where we will try and separate fact from fiction as best we can. It is true that Tony grew up in Arbour Hill from the age of 7. He was an only child and was doted on by his parents. You could even say he was a little spoilt. Many people who have investigated Tony and his life found that many of his claims had been exaggerated or were just plain lies, including his qualifications and abilities. He was not very well educated academically, leaving school at 14, returning to education to do his intercert, not completing it and leaving formal education once more. He did a massage course and again didn't finish it, and so didn't even have qualifications, but that didn't stop him practicing unlicensed. He got a job working at the Grafton Health Studio as a fitness instructor. When it came to his bodybuilding successes, there is no record of him winning the number of competitions he claimed to have won nationally or internationally, only taking part in a handful of local competitions. In 1971, when he claimed to have brought yoga to Ireland, it would turn out to be untrue. A woman at the time had a small yoga class and Tony would help out. He had no formal training, but that didn't stop him. He eventually took over after the woman who started it became disillusioned in the way Tony was running the classes, and she would go on to say that all he knew was learned from a book. He was lazy and lacked ability. But one thing for sure, he was a great salesman, and when it came to selling himself, he was second to none, and people flocked to his classes. He continued to run these yoga classes for 2 years, and it was said people were mesmerised by him. He had them under his control. It was around this time that he started to make outlandish statements surrounding the power of his yoga sessions. He claimed that 94% of people that came to him with mild or serious illnesses showed marked improvement after attending his classes. In 1978, a News of the World newspaper journalist confronted Tony with his claims he could cure cancer. They made him aware of the UK's Cancer Act of 1939, which states no person shall take part in the publication of any advertisement containing an offer to treat any person for cancer. Tony's response, "I wasn't aware of that, it was a genuine mistake." But this was only the beginning of his shady claims. By the late 70s and 80s, Tony had around 30 yoga studios across Ireland, and this is when he began delving into other related fields. He began studying and practicing hypnosis and hypnotherapy. He decided to expand his yoga empire to the UK, where during his yoga sessions he began practicing what he called absent healing, which was the ability to heal someone while both meditating at the same time, even though they might be miles away from each other. His belief was that everyone had a light force inside of them, that healing is possible by meditating on it. This is where Tony started to let it be known that he had psychic abilities, which he would bring into other businesses in the future. Once Tony started to make big money, he decided to invest in real estate in Kilbarrack, Howth and Malahide. An especially beautiful building that he acquired was the Hicks Tower, a former Martello Tower in Malahide, which now looks like a small French chateau. It was first built in 1805 and remodelled in 1911. In these properties he began to set up what we would call communes for his most dedicated followers. It was said they worked relentless hours, often with little or no pay. I came across one interview of a husband losing his wife to becoming a full-time follower of Tony. At first he didn't mind. She'd go to the yoga classes 2 to 3 times a week, and it seemed to do her good. But then it came to where she was going every morning before work, and the only thing she would read was Tony's literature and speak his words. His wife was losing connection with her children as well as her husband. Soon she would give up her job and work for Tony at one of his kiosks for half the money she earned at her old job. Eventually she would cut ties completely and live at one of the communes full time, explaining to her family that her life for the first time had purpose. In 1974, a journalist, June Levine, visited the commune in Templeogue in Dublin. She stayed one night with 36 others who told her they believed they were reincarnated with Tony from the time of Jesus Christ. One follower believed he was reincarnated Saint Joseph, another Moses, another the Virgin Mary, and another Mary Magdalene. But other former devotees have described Tony as a master in stagecraft and that they had believed he was Jesus Christ. Followers were asked by Tony to kiss his feet. Another ex-follower told how members would jump around, fall off their chairs or flap about the floor. The Tony Quinn Centre in Dublin offered prayers to be said by Quinn and his associates for a subscription of €30 per month. June spoke with the followers and what they told her would make her hair fall out, literally. One girl had completed a 40-day water fast and weighed 35 kilograms, which is around 5.5 stone. She had stopped menstruating. The fast was to reconnect with God, but not the God of religion, but to the energy that is the life force. She explained by not menstruating she had no impurities in her body. When June challenged Tony about this, he said, "The yoga diet of fruit and fasting improves the body so much it becomes clean." June also told how another couple had put their baby on a diet without milk, instead receiving bone and meal tablets and halibut oil. Another woman who had stayed at the commune for 10 days to study Tony's form of yoga became disinterested in her children. On returning from the commune, she required psychiatric care and refused one of her children milk in any form. Once the article June wrote for the Sunday World newspaper was published, the paper got a flurry of letters from the Templeogue commune, saying the article was unfair. They also claimed the lady who stayed at the commune for the 10 days was mentally disturbed before she went into the commune, but there was no explanation given why she was allowed to stay if there were concerns for her mental health. One letter described how people like Mozart, Leonardo da Vinci, and Thomas Edison attributed their creations to a greater intelligence that Tony too possessed, and that Jesus, Buddha, and other great masters of the past used this intelligence. That in the world there was only one man who could practice this meditation at its perfect level, Tony Quinn. The letter went on to say he seems to be transformed into light, an aura vanishes and the outline of his body becomes indefinite. that Tony could heal the sick and cast out evil spirits. I tell you, these letters didn't help to kill the idea that it was a cult. In 1977, the Evening Press reported on the disappearance of 2 members of the Howth commune of 34 members, living together for 4 years. They were 25-year-old Sean Dillon, a printing worker from Howth Road in Raheny, and 24-year-old Jim Fay, a civil servant from Navan. The 2 men came to the house 18 months before. Sean was a non-swimmer, and it is thought he had fallen into the sea, and Jim, described as a poor swimmer, jumped in after him. Jim's clothes were found on the pier along with Sean's shoes. The bodies were never recovered, and therefore foul play could not be ruled out. In 1993, Tony moved to the Bahamas, which is a tax-free haven. From here, he set about adding seminars to his now ever-expanding portfolio. It included healing and guided meditations, telling the attendees to visualize wealth and they would respond with ecstatic vigour, that he could tap into their psyche and alter their auras through all his study of the mind. They would be offered CDs of guide meditations and be encouraged to listen daily at home. Quinn did not advertise his seminars through normal channels, but told his followers to recommend the seminars to others to achieve success on their own. So you may ask, how much did these seminars cost? A 10-day seminar would cost you $20,000, and after learning preliminary mind technology, students can advance to the Mind Masters course, which costs $50,000. One person that attended a seminar spoke afterwards about Tony telling the attendees to flail on the floor, jump around while seeing and pointing to lights coming out of the sea when there was none. Tony did say at one of his seminars that he didn't know if he was starting a cult, but knew his purpose was to work with millions of people. When a reporter from the Sunday Times went undercover to a London invitation-only event, they discovered it operated like a pyramid selling scheme, or some would call a multi-level marketing scheme. The reporter was encouraged to borrow to pay for the 2-week seminar fee of £12,000. About 70 people would attend each seminar, held in locations such as Egypt and the Bahamas. A £15,000 seminar fee would generate £2,000 for the person who made the introduction, and if the newcomer recruited someone else, the introducer would receive a further £1,000. People were encouraged to use their credit cards, remortgage their house, and borrow from the bank or credit union, but not to tell these institutes what it was for. The reporter was also told of Tony claiming that he had cured people of cancer and other ailments. Tony also promised at these seminars an increased turnover of 62% in the first year, 108% in the second year, 190% in the third year, a total of 360%. A 32% average life satisfaction increase after 3 to 6 months, increasing again as 55% after 3 years. Big claims. Film director Jim Sheridan told the Sunday Tribune he met with Tony to discuss a screenplay at his home in Malahide. He said Tony told him about a vision he had where he was walking on sand and he followed some Middle Eastern people to the top of a hill where he saw thousands of people listen to Jesus speak. Then he realised it was him. He was Jesus. In 2009, a Sunday World journalist, Nicola Tallant, reported on the contents of video footage obtained by the newspaper of an EDUCO seminar. In the tape, Tony claims that he can program children to ensure that they have a much better future, claiming he used the same techniques that Hitler used to program children to carry out acts of genocide, and Hamas used to create suicide bombers from kindergarten children. Tony stated, "Children, if you realise, are almost like sponges. Their minds are sensitive and you can put programs into children's minds." In 2010, it was reported that a former follower, Marie Lawler from County Waterford, sued Tony in the Irish High Court for alleged sexual assault and battery and fraud. In testimony, Tony claimed Marie was blackmailing him, that she had been a good friend for over 20 years and had attended his seminars. However, she turned against him and she and her son wanted money from him. She threatened if she didn't get the money, she would start a negative campaign. Tony didn't pay the money, and as a result, the negative campaign began. and the outcome is unknown. As of 2025, Tony Quinn is still alive at the age of 79 and is still an active businessman and mind coach residing in the Bahamas. His most recent girlfriend is 42 years his junior. Her name is Amelia Hatting from South Africa, but she changed her name to Eve after she was introduced to Tony, having been recruited through his EDUCO seminar scheme. Tony was heard to say, "Eve, I presume," when introduced to the new recruit. Eve was 19 at the time she was presented to Tony, and he was 61 in 2005. Eve has not been seen publicly with Tony since 2014. So to end this video, I would like to list how Tony Quinn's EDUCO compares to Keith Raniere's Nixium. They both did seminars under the multi-level marketing model with recruitment agents who have a downline. It has a leader who claims exceptional mental skills. Tony had a change of course with his persona like Keith did. In Keith's case, he was super businessman and smartest man in the world, then super mystic, scientist and smartest man in the world as guru of human potential company. In Tony's case, he was yogic master, healer and Jesus figure, then greatest business guru in the world, plus fitness and health and mystic healer and aura reader. Like Keith, Tony's followers believed he was a prophet. Tony claimed that he commands the highest feeds of any mind trainer in the world. Keith's followers made similar claims. Both men claimed to be the smartest or greatest thinker in the world. Those who recruit encourage people to cut off contact with their friends and family. The sexual assaults by the leader. Tony claims he was awakening the women's kundalini. Keith claimed he was empowering them by giving them his semen. Pressure on members not to speak out. Ex-members known for being afraid to speak out about their experiences. So I guess the only difference between them is Keith is in prison and Tony is not. Just to finish off, certain things mentioned, such as fasting and the ketogenic diet, is beneficial, and a lot more research into both have been done since. I have done both and find them very good. But like anything, moderation is key, and I would never promote starving yourself for any purpose, whether to lose weight or for spiritual purposes. Thank you all as always. Don't forget to hit the hype button, which is only visible on your phone for the first 7 days of a new video, whereas the like and subscribe button is always there, and none of it costs anything but helps me a great deal. See you in the next one, and thank you again.